more data-driven from a journalistic point of view. So it should be quite something for everybody. So come on in, and we will start in about a minute. And let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure others will be showing up a little bit later, but we're going to go ahead and get started and respect those who came in on time, as my mother used to do. If you weren't in the car, you got left. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn. I'm super excited about our guests that we have today, Rasheeda Childress. Um, and I'm sure everybody will get quite a bit out of this Lunch and Learn. It's going to be very, very informative. I'm Paul Hosh, and I am with Nonprofit Fundraising Management. And as most of you know, we use modern fundraising to help Black communities thrive. And we help them modernize their fundraising by creating cases for support, direct asks, special events, grant writing, and more importantly, we manage the sort of the back room of fundraising. But let's get to Rasheeda. I'm super excited, and I want to welcome Rasheeda. She has an extensive bio, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but I might because it's pretty impressive. She's the senior editor at the for fundraising for the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and for those of you who don't know, that is the leading authority on fundraising in the world. Just so you're aware. So I've been trying to get Rasheeda on this Lunch and Learn for a while, so I'm super excited. She leads the coverage on fundraising trends, donor behavior, and nonprofit leadership. She curates weekly the fundraising update. That's a newsletter. She provides nonprofit professionals timely insights and strategies through widely read publication. She has an extensive journalism background. Her career spans over 2 decades. Um, she has been reporting, including Associations Now, the Kansas City Star, Higher Education Technical News, and Campus Crime. That was the one thing I used to read every when I was in college. It was called the Weekend Roundup, and it looked at all the crime that happened. That was a quite interesting part of the newspaper. Her educational background is she has a bachelor's degree from Howard University in DC. A lot of my boys went to Howard, a great school. She's a speaker and a panelist. She's quite sought after, and she's presented at events and conferences like the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and that's probably the leading authority of fundraising professionals in the country. She led the LEAD conference. She also has spoken at Classic Collaborative and a number of webinars. She's recognized as a clear and thoughtful reporting. She offers actionable insights to help nonprofits navigate the evolving philanthropic landscape. And how I found Rasheeda was she wrote an article on reoccurring giving, which was really insightfully done. In fact, I did a video based off of her reporting on that. So I was quite impressed by her writing. She's an advocate for fundraising well-being. She addresses the challenges faced by fundraising professionals, particularly concerning burnout and job satisfaction. She's a contributor to discussions on racial equality in philanthropy. She explores how racial bias affects um, which organizations get funded and provides advice to Black churches navigating those disparities. Welcome, Rasheeda. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
And so I have a couple uh, icebreaker questions, and then we'll jump right in.
Okay.
Um, what's your favorite philanthropy myth that's busted?
In terms of myths about philanthropy, I think There's sometimes the belief that people who are philanthropists are just very, very wealthy people, and philanthropy really comes from all over. And the bulk of the givers don't have tons of money, but they're just trying to make a difference.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. What one book every minister leader should read, would you say?
Um, I don't know. I think this is one book everybody should read, whether they're in the ministry or not. But it's called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. It's by Susan Cain. It's just a really good read, and it talks about the importance of looking at people's character and, character in terms of their underlying true nature, who they are, what makes them who they are, as opposed to sort of this cult of personality that we've gotten into and sort of the loudest voice wins, but really true character and true leadership. So it's a good book.
Yeah, that's a great topic. We might have to have you come back and, and talk about that. Uh, I remember when I used to work with this one organization, every time one donor said something, they wanted to change everything. I'm like, that's one donor. We have thousands of donors, so we have to, be careful of the squeaky wheel. That's a great point. And another thing is, my sister always says, people tell you who they are. All you have to do is
Yeah.
just pay attention. So that's a great point. Um, what is a donor trend that excites you right now?
I think right now the sort of the one trend that's exciting and positive is that donors are being a lot more strategic and a lot more thoughtful in their giving. And so I think that's a good thing. They're thinking about the long-term impacts and really sort of what their donation is going to do and how it's going to help a charity.
That's great. That's great, and that's always good, especially for those that are preparing and are doing the sort of the hard work to make sure that their programs, have measurements. Um, what would be an alternative career dream for you?
Um, I just discovered this probably a few years ago when I was working at an association, and they do a lot of events. And I really think I would be a great event planner, and that would be like a
Oh my
great career
gosh.
for me. I mean, just like these big meetings, and there's
Uh-huh.
like the meeting side of just like planning the event, but then also like you get to find these speakers, people who are inspirational, who you want them to talk in front of this massive people and give like insights. Like I was at the AFP conference, the
Hmm.
Fundraising Professionals Conference, and they had a astronaut who talked about how he had been
Wow.
um denied it, into the space program 12 times, but he kept trying. And
Oh
he
wow.
sort of got in, and he was like, his parents were immigrants from Mexico, and he'd always worked in the fields and just talking about sort of growing up and then moving into the astronaut. But I think it's really cool, sort of finding the speakers, like that
Right.
whole realm is very exciting to me.
So not so much on fundraising galas, but more on conferences. Because if that was, I'd be like, you and I need to talk after this meeting, because that's the one thing I do not like is putting on galas. Oh, but
Yeah.
they're so necessary, though. Gosh. What historical figure would you love to interview if you had a
You know,
choice?
I thought about this for a little bit, and if language is not a barrier, if we can just speak to each other's hearts, I would really like to interview Nefertiti. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah, yeah. So the African queen, she was
Yes.
she and her pharaoh. I think she was married to Ramses the second. They ruled
Hmm.
Egypt for many, many years. They sort of moved the country away from polytheism to more of a monotheism, not quite exactly monotheism, but they focused like on one god, like a sun god, who they
Hmm.
really adored. And she just is just interesting. And then she like disappeared. Like no one knows what happened to her. So I kind of would love to be like, girl, where did you go? Why did your reign sort of end so strangely? So that's why I
That's
would.
interesting. That's really interesting. I
Yeah.
like that. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to start with a poll. So, Alex, if you can just pull up the poll, and this, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to help us sort of tailor the this talk. So, please fill this out. Rasheeda, you might have to do it as well to get it off your screen. But it's what is your biggest fundraising challenge right now? And one of them is we don't have a donor list, we don't know how to ask, we don't follow up to or say thank you. we're not clear on what we're raising for, and we're uncomfortable talking about money. So just click on that and submit it, and then Alex will bring it up a little bit later, and then we'll review that. Alex, let me know when it's everyone has filled it out. So let's go ahead and jump into some questions that we have. Understanding fundraising misconceptions. What's the biggest myth about fundraising in nonprofit sector right now?
I would say, and this is, and I don't know if it's necessarily for the sector, but when people talk about fundraising, I feel like the biggest myth is people think fundraising is just like asking for money. And that is not, if that's all you do, you're not going to be a successful fundraiser.
That's
So
very true.
fundraising is really about sort of building long-term relationships with your donors in ways such that you can ask them for money and have success.
Yeah, I 100% agree. In fact, the ask is probably like less than 2% of the whole thing. I mean, most of it is relationship building, especially the stewardship and keeping them to give. That's a great point. And how does that show up specifically in community-led groups like Black churches, perhaps?
Yeah, I think in small community-led groups, um, what you're dealing with is you're dealing with one person who kind of has to do everything, and that's just not
Great point.
sustainable. It's causing a lot of burnout. But if you're doing everything, if you're the person at the church who has to, um, you've got to come up with all the programming, you've got to go and talk to all the people, you've got to do like all these things, and you're supposed to fundraise. All you're really going to have time to do is ask people for money. And maybe because of, you helped with the program and you helped somebody, bring their kids in, maybe they're going to give you money because they do have some type of relationship with you, but you're not going to be focused on sort of that relationship building that you kind of need to have as a fundraiser, where you can think about each donor. You can sit down and say, oh, here are the donors. What are some things that they like? What are some things at the church that they're interested in? And it's really a time issue, I think, for most small nonprofits. They just don't have the bandwidth to get in there and do like all the things that fundraisers need to do to be successful. And it can come across like just asking for money. And it can come across so badly that, when people see you come and they turn, they're like, oh, I've got to get away. She's going to ask me for money and run away from you. So you don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it reminds me of the 80-20 rule too. You got to kind of focus on that, those the top 20% of your supporters, because often, they're giving you 80%. And when I'm talking to many of the churches, often they want to treat everybody the same, because they're thinking more spiritually. And I'm like, no, we're talking about resources and fundraising. And so you don't treat everybody the same on this side. On this side, yes. But on the fundraising side, focus on the top, because your bandwidth is so limited. You can't see everybody. So that's such a great point. And how much attention should nonprofits be paying to recurring giving opportunities?
Recurrent giving is big, and that can be a huge part of your fundraising funnel if you can get people into a recurring giving program. So, most people for recurring giving, they think monthly giving because that's like an easy thing to do. It's what people know. It's how Netflix does it. It's how,
Exactly.
there's so many models out there that's like just give a little bit each month. And so, I know there are a lot of software programs and things out there that will help you do monthly giving, and you can start as low as like $5 a month. But the key is to get people in, and it's going to take a little bit of, you're going to have to spend a little bit of time with that. Most of the successful monthly giving programs, they like have a name. It's like the insider circle or just something that ties them together. And as
Mhm.
part of that, they will get like a monthly newsletter. And in the newsletter, um, it will say, oh, this is what we've done this month. These are
Right.
this is where your money has gone. Like, thanks to all of you who gave a monthly donation, your money helped, provide, 100 meals, at our kitchen on Sundays. So you want to keep them together. Another thing that people who have monthly donor programs do is they have like a Zoom call that they invite people. You don't want to do it every week or something, but like quarterly, like once a quarter or twice a year. For churches, you can have your pastor see, like, whatever question do you want to ask about the church or programs going on, or if you have different programs. And that it's really good. And the other thing about monthly giving is if people have the bandwidth to do more, you can move them sort of up into additional giving. Like you can say, oh, you've been giving us $5 a month. Can you give us $10 a month? And if
Mhm.
they do, you've like doubled the amount of money that they're
It's
raising.
true.
Because
Yeah.
you've gone from what's that, $60 a year to $120 a year, or if they're
Yeah.
$10 a month and you get them to go up to $15 a month, that's still a 50% increase on your fundraising return. And and it's an easy ask to make. You can make it sort of at the end of the year, like where are we doing our things? A lot of people with monthly for giving, what people like about it is that the people who do it will set it and forget it. We all know that there's
Yes.
something that we were supposed to cancel and we forgot to
Uh-huh.
cancel it and it just keeps showing up on the bill. Well, that's how
Yeah.
monthly giving can happen too. So it can, um, it's got a lot of benefits. And people who do it, a lot of people with monthly giving, that's like 30 to 40% of the giving that they get for their organization is through monthly giving.
That's a great point. And a lot of times too, when you don't show up kind of a thing, you may not give if you're not on the recurring giving. So
Mhm.
if you miss, two or three times or a couple months or whatever on vacation doing something, you're going to get that drop, as from a organization. But if you have them signed up, it's all good, and they can kind of come to church and not have to worry. Oh, I left my wallet, or none of that. It's
Mhm.
all sort
Yeah.
of taken care of. That's a great point. And a lot of those software organizations out there, they put out those reports, and they all came out like right about now, and they talk about the CRMs. I mean, and one of the things that they all highlight is reoccurring giving, and they're looking at how much that has grown over time. So if the participants on this call aren't looking at reoccurring giving, it's really a good idea to do that. And you need to be promoting it, I think is what Rasheeda was alluding to earlier. You have to promote it and you have to be educating on it as well. That's a great point. Let's move on to, let me check with you, Alex. Is the poll completed?
Yeah, let me just put it up.
Thanks. Okay, we don't have a donor list. That's interesting. And we don't know how to ask. And that the seventh other one is we feel uncomfortable talking about those. That's what we deal with. I'm a little bit surprised that we don't follow up and say thank you, because that I run into that a lot, and we're not clear um, on what we're raising for. Any thoughts on this, Rasheeda?
Well, I would say you definitely have to sort of follow up and say thank you. And it may kind of those that and the donor list things may go hand in hand. Um, and the biggest fundraising organizations, like, the colleges and universities, the
Hmm.
major hospital systems that are raising like hundreds of millions of dollars a year,
Right,
they have a whole team that they do nothing but follow up. They do
right.
nothing
That's
but
very
say
true.
thank you to donors. And they have lists. And how do you know a donor's been thanked? Because they're on the list. And then you send a thank you note and you check them off. And then this person got a
Yeah,
thank you note. And they
yeah,
keep track of all those things. And a lot of people use sort of this, various expensive software to do it, but you can do it in Excel sheet if you've
yeah.
got it. You got to have a list of who gave you money, and you have to have a list of, did I thank you? And I know it's harder at a church because, first of all, I don't even know. Do people still, sometimes they pass around the basket, or sometimes
Right. They do. Yeah.
somebody goes up to you and says, oh, here, this is for to feed them someone for the program. And you're
Hmm.
doing 50 other things. And you're like, okay, I got you, sister. But you don't remember like
Right.
an hour
Right.
later, but you remember that you have the money, but you don't, you're like, well, who gave this to me? And you
Yeah.
don't get a chance to write it down. So it's really important, even in these situations where a lot of it's sort of high touch, where you're meeting people on the fly, or you're meeting people in church, and you may have a lot of other things to do. You may be trying to get the youth ministry singing or
Hmm.
whatever. You still have to write those notes down and be sure, did I follow up with that? And you may just
Hmm.
want to take like one day a week and say, you know what, Thursday is going to be my day when I'm going to look and follow up with anyone who gave me a gift. And if, you have a small group of donors, you can just give them a phone call. People love phone calls. You can say, hey, sister, whoever, I really want to thank you for this gift. This makes such a big difference. We're able to do
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z with this. And then,
Yes.
and then that's it. But you want to make sure people are thanked. And yeah, definitely thank people and definitely, but you got to, you also need the list. And I know it's hard. I know people are coming up to you during church and after church, and you have a lot of other things to do. But really, if you can sort of get that list together, that will help you. And and just start with what you know, because sometimes people are like, well, I don't have everybody's email address, or I don't have, just start with what you know. And you can,
Hmm.
and then if it's like if you pick one day a week to focus on it, if you're on a Thursday and you realize we've got like, 50 donors and I have phone numbers for half of them and email addresses for the other half. That's when you say, next time I see this person, three people, just pick three people a week, say, I'm going to get another piece of information. Say, oh, sister, we're going to start a mailing list. We want to add you to it. Or, pass it around at the church. Say, we're starting a mailing list and we want to make sure everybody knows what we're doing and have them write it down. And that will help you kind of build that information.
This, you dropped some really good gems here. This is great. It's so true. We were doing, I remember when we were just starting off, and usually with our clients, the very first thing that we do is which are churches primarily, is we send the pastor on a thank you tour, and he goes out and he thanks all of individually, not as a group, but individually. And it's invariably that at least one or two of their longtime uh, supporters, congregants, will break down and cry. And they'll say something like, I've been going to this church for 30 years and no one has ever thanked me for my gift. Because it's just not in that lexicon. They just don't think about that. Whereas at hospitals and universities, they have someone that's just their job to make sure that they're thanked and stewarded. So that those are such good points, really good points. I might have to have you come back and just talk about that, because that's a great point that a lot of the people on this call just do not do. Let's go into psychology of giving, because I know you've done research on that and pieces on that. What do you know about what makes people give and give again? What would you say to that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, first we got to sort of get the language right. Like, because I like to tell my children, you can't make anyone do anything. I can't make you, sometimes you gotta let it go. You gotta do what you can do, and then people will do what they're going to do.
Hmm.
And so I think we got to remember that we're inspiring people to give. No matter what it is, we are inspiring them to say, I want to make a gift. And so how do you do that? Well, it's a simple formula. It's really simple to talk about. It's really hard to execute, but it's simple to talk about. And the simple formula is you find the issue that you care about, that they care about, and then you show them how their contribution will make a positive impact on that issue. Um, and that's kind of it. And that will sort of get them to give. Like, if not for this, then this would not happen. And but it's hard because not everyone has the same issue that they care about. And it's sometimes it's hard to explain, without your gift, all the things that will happen. And it's something that's why people hire fundraisers. That's why they
Hmm.
hire people who sit down, and particularly these big organizations, and they spend time thinking about, okay, what are all the stories that we have to tell about the impact of our work? Like, how many people were fed at our organization because you donated not $1 million. You weren't some huge philanthropist. You donated $5. But because you
Hmm.
donated $5 along with 100 other people, we were able to feed
Yeah.
all of these, people who otherwise wouldn't have had a meal because, they've lost their job in, some of these government cuts or whatever. We're able to feed those people. We're able to make sure that every day those children don't go to bed hungry. So
Mm.
that's really significant things. Um, but it's also hard because not everybody cares about the same thing. And some people will be like, well, there's other food banks or other pantries or the other things. So you've got to find that issue. And that's the thing that's hard about fundraising, because not everybody is your person. You could tell them the story and that's just not going to move them because that's not their issue. That's not their
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point as well. And the one thing that I learned is you have to find your people that's interested in your causes, and you lean into them, and you don't try to be everything to everybody else, but you lean into those people are really interested in what it is you're doing. And you do a lot better if you focus on what it is you do, because there are people that are your people. And all you have to do is push that and you're okay. But if somebody's interested in something else, don't try to bend the program to be something else, because then you got other people that are going to be in different categories as well. So that's a great point. And how do leaders shift from fear to faith in fundraising? How do they do that?
Yeah. Now, fundraisers, I interview a lot of fundraisers. So I talk to fundraisers a lot. I go to fundraising conferences. And so, overall, what fundraisers say to me all the time is you have to get out of the scarcity mindset, which it would be the fear, and get into an abundance mindset. You can't be
Yeah,
afraid that there's nothing out there. You have to
yeah,
believe that there is abundance. And so I think, this idea of fear and faith, that's the same thing. You have to move from that mindset that, this is a Hunger Games and I got to compete with this church and that church and
right.
come off and only I can win. I'm going to be the victor. That's not necessarily what fundraising is. You have to have, this
Yeah.
is what, people tell me all the time is that you have to have faith that there's abundance, that this is abundance and there's going to
Hmm.
be that just like you're going to have your people, there's going to be sort of your money. There's going to be money out there for the programs that you have. And it's just sort of shifting that mindset. And I would go into the idea of, um, habit forming research, like, you've got to for probably, 30, 40 days, wake up, tell yourself there's abundance, there's more out there. You've got to shift that mindset and kind of to avoid sort of being stressed about like, oh, there's no money out there. We're going to go broke. We're not going to meet our goal. We're never going to be able to help these children. That's just not going to help you in your fundraising. You have to
Agreed.
have that abundance mindset. And it's a shift and you gotta work on it because I think it really is very easy to slip into that fear mindset of scarcity and there's nothing out there. And, especially with the headlines we read today, I could see how it's really easy to fall into that. So really focus on shifting your mindset and focus on sort of building that habit of mindset shift.
Yeah, we just had a gala in DC with the Emory Fellowship. And, DC, I mean, they're talking about a town that's, sort of dealing with layoffs and cuts.
Yeah.
And we were concerned at first, but we said no, we're gonna go into it. And we ended up raising $125,000. It was
Oh, wow.
incredible,
Yeah.
and so, but it was like we're like, no, there's money there, there has to be money there, and there was. And so you really have to believe, like you said, there is an abundance out there that can support. They're going to be your people and they're going to support you on causes that they're interested in. So that's great. That's very true. The one thing too, this question might also talk about, is there is a fear of asking as well.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you've talked about that, Rasheeda, but if you have, can you lean in a little bit on that too? Because people are used to asking groups of people. That's easy to do when you set up there. Hey, we need to, but sitting down with an individual congregate and asking them for a specific, that's very different.
I did a story recently on the next generation of fundraisers, and I talked to a bunch of new and young fundraisers. And everyone is afraid to ask on their first time, particularly if you're doing sort of big gift fundraising and you're asking
Right.
for like, what would be, even, considered like mid-level to a lot of money, like $1,000, which for some organizations can be mid-level, some it could be like a major
Hmm.
gift. But if you've got to sit there and ask a person $1,000 for $1,000, it's nerve-wracking. It feels like I shouldn't be doing this. I don't want to be doing this. And so that's normal, I'm told. The key is one, practice, but two, um, and this is where we kind of fall short in a lot of areas, is that it really helps to have a mentor. It helps to have
Oh,
someone who
100.
will take you with them on an ask. They'll be like, oh, this is
Hmm.
my person. Like if they've built a relationship with the donor and they can just show you sort of how an ask is done. Because if you go into an ask like, oh gosh, I shouldn't be doing this, and then you ask for that money, you're probably not going to get that money because they're like, oh, she feels awkward about this. I feel awkward about this. I don't want
You
to do
feel
this.
awkward about our awkwardness.
Yeah, so you have to sort of have it. And, you know, and I think we also have to remember um that a no, this is not like and antithetical to in sexual things. No does not mean no. No means not now, is in fundraising parlance. It means that the person is not ready yet. It means that you can go back and ask them later. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean you just got to sort of be like, oh, this person said no, we're never going to talk to them again. You're building a relationship with that person, and if they say no, that's just not the time for them. And you can ask. I think you can say, oh, do you mind if I ask why not now? And
Right.
they may say, oh, well, my kids just started college. And you'd be like, wow,
Hmm.
they're like, oh, that's 4 years. But maybe in 4 years when their kid graduates, they're going to have, an extra lot of money because college is expensive. Because my
Right.
kid is starting this fall. So college is expensive. So they can have a big chunk of change that, yeah, maybe they can give you then.
Yeah.
And so I think you want to just not be you the more you ask, the less flustered I think you will get by no, but just also knowing that no is not like forever. It's not a closed door. It's just sort of like, a window may open later. You just have to
Yeah.
figure that out.
And also too, I'll add one more point and then we'll go to the next one. But I think for me as a fundraiser, when I was first starting, a while ago, 30, I think it was about 30 years ago, I had to shift my mind in that I wasn't asking them for a gift for me to go buy a car or go do something. So I'm asking them for a gift to change the world in some way. And so you just have to sort of understand you're doing good work. And so you should be proud that you're in a position to ask someone to support something that needs supporting and that they should feel good about if they do it. So it's really dissecting the fear and saying why am I afraid? Well, I'm afraid for no reason at all because I'm asking somebody to support something that's going to change the world. And once I made that shift, it was a lot easier for me to make it. Was just a matter of preparing. Then after that, the ask was easy. It was just making sure that I had the information I needed to make the ask properly. But I think that that's important as well. What about donor trust and transparency? What does authenticity in donor communication really look like?
Um, that's kind of a hard one. I feel like it's, there was a Supreme Court ruling years and years ago, and on obscenity, and the justice
Oh,
said,
I remember that. I'm old
he just
enough.
says, I know it when I
No,
see
when
it.
I see it. Yeah.
I know when I see it. So I feel like authenticity is being real, it's being authentic. So, I think people know it when they see it. Some hallmarks of authenticity are going to be plain language, no one
Hmm.
being fancy and pretentious. But just you want to be honest about what's happening. Uh, you don't want to be woe is me. I know this is a time right now when there's a lot of budget cuts and there are a
That's a
lot of
great point.
things going on. But if you're just like, woe is me, we don't have
Right.
any money, we're so, so sad. Nobody wants, I don't want to say nobody, but a lot of people are just like, well, that's not good. It is like,
Sinking ship.
are
Yeah.
you gonna survive? Are you gonna make
Yeah,
it? I'm gonna give my
exactly.
money to an organization that's not gonna make it. So you do want
Right.
to sort of have like, we have a plan. This is what we're thinking of doing. The times are hard, but here's our plan. Would you like to contribute to help us execute this plan. So just you can be real and be authentic and just be honest, but not woe is me. The sky is falling.
Yeah. 100%. And then like what you said earlier too, communicating on a consistent basis, letting them know what's going on. So even after, especially when they give you a gift, and you're communicating, hey, this is what your gift did, like you said earlier, and you're doing that. And then when you go back to them next year or the following year, the gift is going to probably be larger because they now trust you because you were transparent and you're letting them know what's going on. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and I will just to piggyback on that, I will say it is incredibly. Did a story about major gift fundraising, and they said the most important thing is letting those donors know that the gift made the impact that they wanted it to make. So, like if you said it was going to do X, you got to let them know that it actually did do X. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's really important.
Yeah, I agree 100%. 100%. Um, can can small nonprofits like churches be too professional? Can that hurt them?
No, I don't think. I'm going to just say no. I don't think that being too professional has ever I don't think that's going to hurt people. There's this quirky little movie from years and years ago called Blast from the Past with Alicia Silverstone and Brendan Fraser.
I
And
don't know
he
that. I have to
plays
check it out.
yeah, he plays this guy who was living in a 50s bomb shelter, and he never, with his parents, he grew up there and they never left until like 1999. And then he comes out and he's got these 50s sort of sensibilities and all these wonderful manners, just polite to a fault. And at some point, Alicia Silverstone turns to him and she's like, why do you have like all these manners? Why can't you just like be normal? And he's like, manners are a way of showing other people we have respect for them. And I think professionalism is a way to show people you
Good
have
point.
respect for them. Um, if your goal is to show respect to donors, be professionalism. Be professional. Okay, that's what you need to do. But I will say, don't confuse professionalism with being academic or pretentious. Those are different things. Professional is plain language. Professional is doing what you say you're going to do. Professional is if you say this thing is starting on this date, having that be accurate information that's
Yeah.
going out to
Yeah.
your donors. That's professional. Okay. You don't have to use big words or say
Hmm.
something that, makes you sound like you're, above your station or whatever it is that's going to make you sound kind of pretentious. That's
Right.
not professional. Professional is just being respectful of your donors, being honest, saying things, meaning the things you say, and following through on the things you say. That's professionalism.
Yeah, and I think too, people confuse it with spending money as well. I
Mhm.
remember when I was working at a high school in Watts, and we were, in the middle of Watts, and so we have our donors come down and visit the school. And we had a brother school, which was Loyola, which is quite that it's another. I mean, those kids are quite wealthy and so but when the donors came down to our school, we would go and get Subway sandwiches. And, that would be the lunch for our donors. And, the area was clean, everything was nice, but we weren't going to go out and order, filet mignon being delivered, at the school. We're a low income. And so we were very professional, but we were authentic to who we were. And we just tried to maintain that and stayed in our station, I guess, is what it was. And so I agree with that 100%. Often, sometimes people will do a very expensive report, which doesn't reflect who the nonprofit is. And so it's really in all your communication. You can be professional, but you don't need to spend a whole lot of money. And how about storytelling and impact? What makes a compelling donor story, would you say?
I think it's a story that shows the donor really illustrates what the problem is that they're donating to, like really spells it out, and then also explains what impact their gift will have. And often with stories, you want to tell with a single person who really sort of exemplifies what it is you're doing. So if you have a program to get people out of unstable housing situations. You would talk about the person who was living on the street and maybe they
Mhm.
had a baby with them and they were terrified and how they had to, they came to you and they got a home and and were able to be placed, in some sort of apartment or more permanent living situation. And now their child can go to school because they're in
Mhm.
in a school district area, and just sort of all the benefits that have come from that. So I think that's your compelling story. Just stuff that really shows it. And I was talking to a guy from the Ohio Food Bank the other day, and he was telling me a story about how a little girl came into the food bank and she was there with her mother, and her mother was shopping. And um, the little girl said, "Oh, I'm so hungry." And one of the food bank staff was just like, "Oh, here's a peach." And the girl looked at the peach and said, "I can't have it. It's not my day to eat." And apparently
Oh boy.
everybody would take a day where they didn't eat so that there would be enough food for the family. Everyone else would eat, but then one person wouldn't. And it was like, that's a story. That's a compelling story for donors to recognize
Mhm.
that this is what food insecurity does. You have a family, it's too many
Yeah.
people, they can't feed them all, and one person every day doesn't eat, even when they're in a
Yeah.
place that has food. So I think that's how you go compelling.
Yeah. That's a great story. That's a great story. We had one where I had a student that was a he was starting freshman. He was a point guard on our basketball, very talented, super smart as well. He was valedictorian and everything, and he ended up getting accepted to Georgetown, to Georgetown, but he wasn't going to play on Georgetown's basketball team, and that has always been his goal. And so I saw him. I said, "You're going to Georgetown." I said, "But other schools gave you full scholarships where you would play." I said, "But you're going to Georgetown." And he turned around and he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Hosh," he said, "I no longer want to play for the NBA." He said, "I want to own an NBA team. So I'm going to Georgetown to major in business." So, I mean, it was just a shift. But the donors love that story whenever I tell them that story, because that's sort of the process of what they were trying to do, get them to sort of go off and reach for bigger things. So yeah, those sorts of stories land very well. And what about, let's look at racial equity in philanthropy. What have you learned in your reporting about racial bias in funding?
Um, I guess there a racial sort of bias in funding or a disparity, at least in funding.
Mm,
There's a report that came out just recently from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. They do a ton of research on giving in the country. They do a big report every year called Giving USA, and they
right.
did a report that came out, I feel like last week, June 4th. Um, called the Communities of Color report that looked at giving to organizations um, that serve Black people and Indigenous people and those. And so when you look at giving for an entire year, they looked at the year 2022, which was 3 years ago. Um, and I don't remember what the overall number was for giving in that year. So total giving is usually in the hundreds of billions of dollars. I think it was like 500 billion last year, and it was less in 2022. But
Yeah.
I think the total amount of money given to organizations that serve um, whose their primary goal is to serve uh, communities of color, Black people, and uh, this and Indigenous, I think, was part of the thing, but it was like $16 billion or 2.9%. So
Oh
2.9%.
my
So
gosh.
93% of giving went to other organizations, and then basically 3.3% went to organizations
Wow.
um, serving Black people. So that's a pretty big
It's a
difference
gap.
in funding. That's a gap. And it's not to say that, Black people are not being served, because there are lots of organizations out there and the work that they're doing is to serve all people. And so you're getting some of that in that 97%. But of the organizations specifically serving Black people, it's just 3%. So it's small. So there's um a disparity, because I believe, and I feel like hopefully I'm not going without out of date data, but I feel like the Black population in the US is around 11 or 12%. So
Yeah.
you would hope,
13, I think. Yeah.
yeah, you would want hopefully for those to be similar, if
Right.
that's the
And that's just the
population.
Black population. That's
Yeah,
not even
yeah.
the others.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So you'd want that to be higher. And then I wrote a story a couple years ago in 2023 about I was just talking about how organizations that serve Black communities are operating on razor thin margins. They don't have a lot of cushion or reserve funding that they can count on in times of an emergency. And I think it's at like 53% of the organizations would shut down if they lost a key donor,
yeah.
because that's how slim their margins are. So there are some disparities, and we've reported on that a little bit, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's significant. A lot of times when I'm going in and I'm talking to, um, at conferences or whatever, and I'm talking to some of the churches and Black nonprofits, the level of resources that they have, it's incredibly thin. As you said, the margins are really, really thin. And I don't know how they've existed. You sit down and you talk to them, you look at their numbers, and you're just amazed at how they're rubbing two stones together and they're getting stuff done. But I mean, it can't continue that way. It just can't. They're going to have to find another way. And passing the plate is just it's you have to do it differently. Um, I'm going to shift quickly. The audience, if there are any questions, please put them in the chat. I would love for us to be able to ask Rasheeda a few questions as we go. So please feel free to add some questions to the chat, and we'll pull a few, and we'll answer them as best we can. Um, Rasheeda, what would you say that Black nonprofits and Black churches can do to to get more of that pie? What things can they do?
Um, I think it's going to depend, but I think you need to, um, you've got to sort of widen your donor base a little bit, as well as, we talked a little bit earlier about people not thanking the donors that they have. You've got to also really I think it's hard, but you kind of have to, on some level, professionalize your fundraising a little bit if
Hmm.
you want to get the same results that people who have these huge professional fundraising teams
Yeah.
have. If you don't have the bandwidth and the resources right now, start small. So I
Hmm.
would say, go create a donor list. If you don't have a donor list, now's the time to create a donor list. You can start if from memory, you can start from if you people have written you checks, go back
Hmm.
through the checks that you've gotten. If you've still got those sort of kept those in the records for the ledger and just sort of create that list of the people who have given to you and go back and like thank them.
Hmm.
I was talking to some fundraising consultants a couple days ago, and they were like, think about the donors, start with the donors that you have. And um, use them almost sort of like as a brain trust. So if you have some people who've been giving you whatever is a big check for your organization, let's say they gave you, let's say $300 is a big check for your organization, and this person gave you $300, and maybe they give you $300 each year. That's their Christmas gift to your church. Then go to them and say, hey, you've been a real supporter to us. We want to know, like, what kind of things are you interested in? What kind of issues or what kind of things would you like to see here at the church? What are the things that the programs that we're doing? Just find out, use them as a brain trust. If you guys
Hmm.
have problems, if there's like a concern or an issue, people love to give advice.
Hmm.
Um, and so ask them for advice. Say like this,
Hmm.
we've had this concern and have some one-on-ones with those people. And then, don't ask for money in these
Right.
conversations. Just have
Yeah, initially, yeah.
yeah, initially just have a just like a thank you and sort of like a feedback session. Like we're trying to
Right.
find out how we can improve. What are some things, things that are concerns,
Yeah.
things that you love, things that if we should double down on. And then have those conversations with them, ask for some advice. And if you're able to implement their advice, go back to them and be like, hey, we appreciate this advice that you gave us, and this has been so helpful. The other thing you would want to try is to see if they're willing to introduce you to their network. So, are there some other people like yourself who might be interested in what we're doing here? Because we'd love to meet them. Not go ask them for money, because that's sort of, we've done a lot of reporting at the Chronicle about boards, which a lot of nonprofits have a board that sort of manages them or oversees them. And the biggest problems that boards have is they don't want to be asked to be a fundraiser, but they are okay with saying, I will introduce you to somebody else so
Mhm.
you can make the pitch. So you can
Yeah.
be charming and friendly and do all those things, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to go beg my friends for money, basically,
Yeah.
because they see fundraising not as relationship building, but as begging people for money. So they don't want to do that. But if you can say to a person, hey, is this, do you know some other people who are interested in that? That will can also help you expand your network. The other people who, if they're able to give you whatever the amount that check was, probably some of their friends are too. Because that's the circle that they're hanging in. So if they can introduce you to their circle, that's also a way to sort of expand your reach a little bit.
Yeah.
And there are, that's just it. Fundraising is just people who are professional fundraisers who are deep in the weeds of it. There's a ton of stuff out there. I went to a conference, and there's like a whole company. The only thing they do is help you meet people. So like if you are trying to meet Bill Gates, they will look at your board. They will go in and they'll put in all this
Make the
information about
connections.
Yes, about
Yeah.
all the people who you know, and they'll figure out who they know, and sort of, yeah, like 6 degrees of separation. How can we get you to Bill Gates? And that's all they do. Like, and they make money selling the service. So, I mean, networks matter. So,
Yeah.
if you can sort of network, that can help too.
Yeah, we did this thing where I went kicking and screaming. I was actually on vacation, and a board chair of mine, he called me up and he said, "Hey, we want to have a party at our house, and we want donors to come, and we want you to invite your donors, and we'll invite our friends." And he lived way out in Calabasas, and in Los Angeles, that's far.
Mhm.
And for somebody to say it's far in Los Angeles, it's far. And so I'm like, we're not doing that. We're not going to do that. And we're not. And he said, I just wanted to, he said, you made a mistake. I wasn't asking your opinion. I'm the board chair. We're going to do it. He was a brother too. God, I loved him. And so he said, we're going to do it. So I'm just letting you know. And so they did it. I was on vacation, and my assistant called me and afterwards, and she said, "Oh my God, Paul, we got to do these. We got to." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "We didn't make an ask. All we did was we went there. We showed our programs, two programs of what we were doing, and we invited our donors and invited their friends, and the ask was, Rasheeda, was to, all we want you to do is come down and visit the school. That's it. That's all we want you to do." And when they came down and visited the school and saw the program, saw the students, all we had to do was bring out a bunch of forks and stick them in everybody. Because once they come down and see the program, it's over. It's completely over. And so we started doing like 5 or 6 of these every year. Do you know that we would interject between 75 and 150 new donors into our donor database every year? And we're talking about, donors that are living in $2-3 million houses, because that's the circles, as you said, that they swing in. And so their friend comes to one of the salons, is what we call them, then they want to do a salon. And then it just went on and on. And then you're totally right. We even said in the invitation, leave your checkbook at home. We're just telling you about our, so people walk in totally with their guards down. It was fantastic. So I would highly encourage, people to reach out. And I start with the board, and that's what we started with. Again, he was the board chair. So
Mhm.
you start with them, and it just sort of circles around and goes from there. So that is a great point. Have you ever gone to any of those where it's a no ask, and you just sort of talk about the programs?
I have not done them personally. I did do a story about something called porch parties, which is a similar thing on a
Yeah,
smaller scale
yeah.
where you just invite a bunch of people to come to your house, and then you invite someone from the program, either a client who's being served or a
Right.
program director who can just talk about sort of what they're doing. And with the donors and or with the potential donors, and those are typically really helpful because the people who they're invite and that's the other nice thing about it too is that, if someone is on your board or they're like a real supporter and they want to host this event for you, they host the event. They host it at
Yeah.
their
They
scale.
pay for everything.
They put on a nice party. They
Yeah.
at their cost. That's like their
Yes.
sort of gift to you.
Yeah.
And so you're just showing up with sort of like, here's what happened and some brochures or whatever, just so that people can know and understand. And I don't know if people want QR codes nowadays, but just show up with the information. And it's usually very helpful. And you often don't need to make an ask, but if you want to, you can say, hey, if you're able to give a gift tonight, we appreciate it. But I don't know that you have to make an ask. I think
Right.
the key thing is getting those people getting on their radar because sometimes it takes, sort of they talk about in marketing, it takes 7 touches.
Yeah, exactly.
This may be touch one. And so,
Exactly.
coming out is if that's the second touch, at some point they're gonna do it. I keep getting ads on my phone for this gift I want to get for my father, but it's like I've already decided to get it, but they keep showing it to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Like,
We got 5 more times to send it to you. We know you're gonna buy it. We're gonna send it
yeah,
to you 5 more times.
yeah.
Yeah.
So mhm.
Yeah. But the one point that I want to make that you're kind of talking about is when you're asking a host, though, to do this at their home and you tell them, hey, we're not actually going to be making an ask, they lean into it because they don't like to be, from my experience, they don't like to be in a situation where they've invited their friends and now they're being pressured to sort of give to something. So when you tell the host, hey, we're not asking here. Our goal is to get them to come down. And then we use the host to sort of help us get them to come down. So the host would then call, hey, we're going to be going down there on this date. Which dates work for you? And it's just a win-win. So I 100% agree with you on that regarding the porch parties. Well, it looks like we're at close to 10 o'clock. Let me see if there's any questions I want to go over. Here's a question here by Terry. Where can we look for grant writing webinars and resources for people new to this? Is there a national givers who wants to give to nonprofits to help them meet a need that we can tap into? Do you know any information about that, Rasheeda?
There is not, I don't know that there's a list of givers out there. I would say one place to start to consider would be like your local community foundation. So in every region, there's usually what's known as a community foundation, and they are a place where donors can come and they often set up funds to do like scholarships and those kind of things. So there are donors there, but then there are sort of program officers who interact with the local nonprofits. And so if a donor comes in and says, hey, I'm really interested in giving to children, the program officers there can be like, oh, well, here are like 5 or 6 nonprofits who sort of meet these needs. So maybe your local community foundation is a place to start. In terms of grants, at the Chronicle of Philanthropy, we do not write about grants anymore at all. So in terms of like writing, generally, we don't write about like here's an open grant, but we have partnered with a group called Grant Station, and they have a database of open grants. So when you subscribe to the Chronicle, you get free access to Grant Station, or you can just try to get access to Grant Station. Um, there are federal databases of federal grants, but I wouldn't put too much stock into
Yeah.
that just at this point in time. Um, there are I'm trying to think if I know of free resources. I know there are some um, AI grant writing
Yeah,
software
AI
out
does a
there.
pretty good job. Yeah.
And so they can tell you, and it's really sort of depends. Like I know I went to a AFP session a couple last in April, and one of the women who spoke there with the Boys and Girls Club was saying that their Microsoft Copilot, which is part of Microsoft's like Word thing, but they
Right.
they had purchased the Copilot AI edition, and it actually offered up when they was like searching for grants. It had like a grant search feature that could help
Interesting.
them. And so I think you've got to sort of dig around a little bit. And your local, I would try your AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals. They're a
Yeah.
national organization and they have chapters all over. Your local AFP chapter may also know some good grants and
Yeah,
grant.
there and we had on here, and you all may those that are interested in this question, you may want to check one of our lunch and learns. We had a young lady on here. She's been so helpful. In fact, you guys loved her so much, she came on again, and she started an organization. It's called Grant Orb, and her name is Deepa. And it's an AI generated grant that writes for she talked about it the first time, and then she came back. People were like, we want to see it, so we did another live, and she did a couple grants live. Rashida, it was ridiculous. I mean, I've been writing grants for a number of years, and it was citing sources. It was amazing. And so I would really encourage you all to check out that lunch and learn with Deepa and sort of look at what it is that does, because I was blown away at how powerful it was. But then also regular AI chat as well as Gemini. Go in there, type up ask it to, tell it what area you live in, and uh, ask it what sort of grants you're looking for, capacity building, whatever, and it will list out, uh, foundations that are in your area and that sort of cover that information based on what they have on their website. A lot of times, foundations have different charges for what they
Yeah.
have on their website, but that's pretty helpful as well. And one thing too, I think that's such a great question. One of the things I used to do is go over just for a minute, if we can, Rashida. Um, I used to help convene a bunch of foundations that were local and would talk about, they'd come together, maybe 10 of them, and then a bunch of nonprofit organizations would come and they would each sort of talk about what it is that they're looking at doing. And then there would be questions back and forth. Have you ever been a part of anything like that, Rashida? Where it's sort of like a round table of foundations?
I have not been a part of anything like that, but I've heard that, like, and certainly in today's times, that foundations are trying to get together and sort of figure out where they can um, be more effective and meet more needs and sort of what some of the needs are in this time.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Well, anyway, that's something that we're looking at trying to do. So stay tuned, everyone, because we're going to try to get a couple foundations together, maybe do a mini conference and have it'll be free, and we'll have sort of some foundations sort of answering questions. We're talking to Lily right now. They're one of the foundations that we're trying to help us spearhead doing that. So I don't want to take the time to thank you, Rashida. This has been so informative, so helpful. People are writing in here, great information. Love it. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Any last thoughts? Oh yeah, and also talk about your giveaway that you're gonna your takeaway that you're gonna be sending out.
Oh, they asked me for a takeaway. So I just gave, I think, 4 tips to help you with fundraising in today's times when it's kind of challenging, when you've got a lot of economic uncertainty and those kind of things. And so one of the tips is from a lady I interviewed recently um, in Atlanta, where they, I guess, have a give a little campaign because they're like, if you can't give a lot, just give us a little.
Oh, interesting.
And, just, because it is tough times and some people are feeling strapped, but they're like, if everybody gives a little, then we can still have success.
No
So
question. Well, thank you so much. And then lastly, everyone, our next Lunch and Learn is going to be on managing a $100,000 gala. And that's going to be done by lead pastor Joe Daniels from the Emory Fellowship. And that's going to be on July 9th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank everybody so much. Really appreciate you all being here. Thank you once again, Rashida. Really
I think about it.
appreciate you. And we'll see you guys in a month. Take care. Bye bye.